Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MemoryCherish podcast. I'm Dr. Laura Whitman, and today I'm joined by my ever-charming co-host, Mark. How are you today, Mark?
Well, hey there, Dr. Laura. I'm just dandy, thank you. You know, your mention of charming reminds me of my dog's insistence on being the center of attention at the park. But enough about my four-legged friend. How are you?
Oh, Mark, that's delightful. I'm doing well, thank you. Actually, just the other day, I was having tea with a retired friend of mine. We got to talking about finances in retirement, and I realized how many of us are actually quite concerned about this phase of life. But before we dive in, I want to remind our listeners that while we're here to provide insights and share our experiences, none of what we discuss should be taken as financial advice. Always consult with a financial professional for your specific needs.
Retirement planning, the stuff of both your dreams and nightmares, right? I remember when I first started thinking about retirement, I was about as clueless as a cat in a yarn store. So it's a topic that can ruffle feathers, but it's so important.
Exactly, Mark. And that's why today's episode is all about retirement planning and how to be smart with finance. Whether our listeners are near retirement age or just starting their careers, there's something here for everyone.
You bet, Dr. Laura. It's never too early or too late to start thinking about this. And I'll tell you, the earlier you start, the more time your money has to grow. That's one of the first things I learned about retirement savings.
And on that note, today we'll be delving into the basics of retirement planning, common mistakes to avoid, investment strategies, and even budgeting for retirement. We've got a lot to cover.
We sure do. I think this is going to be a great episode, especially since we'll be sharing some of our personal experiences along the way. I've got a few stories that might just bring a smile to your face.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that, Mark. And to our listeners, we want you to be part of this conversation too. Think about your own retirement planning. What concerns you? What are your goals?
That's right, and remember there are no silly questions or concerns. Retirement planning can be a complex beast, but we're here to make it a bit more approachable, and dare I say, even a little fun.
Absolutely, Mark. So, let's dive into the world of retirement planning and see if we can't make sense of it all. Shall we start with the basics?
So let's do it, Dr. Laura. Now, when we talk about the basics of retirement planning, the first thing that comes to my mind is the good old retirement savings account. I remember when I first opened mine, I felt like I was trying to read a foreign language.
That's a great point, Mark. There are different types of retirement plans out there, like 401ks, IRAs, and pensions. Each has its own set of rules and benefits. It's essential to start early to take full advantage of these.
Early indeed. It's like planting a tree. The best time was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. I tell you, when I first started, I put in just a little bit each paycheck, and it was surprising how it started to add up.
And that's the beauty of compounding interest, Mark. Even small amounts can grow significantly over time. So for our listeners, think about this. Do you have a retirement plan in place? If not, what's holding you back?
Yeah, and it's not just about saving money. It's also about understanding what you're saving for. Like, do you want to travel in retirement or maybe just enjoy the comfort of your home without financial stress?
Exactly, Mark. Retirement planning is as much about understanding your future needs and dreams as it is about the numbers. It's about creating a vision for your later years and then working towards it.
And let's not forget about the fear factor. I know plenty of folks who are scared stiff by the thought of all this. They worry they're too late, or they won't have enough, or they'll make the wrong decisions.
Those fears are valid, Mark. But the key is to start somewhere and keep learning. Remember, folks, it's okay to ask for help. Financial advisors, retirement planning seminars, even good old-fashioned books can be great resources.
You're singing my song, Dr. Laura. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your finances. So, to our listeners, what questions do you have about retirement planning? What's one thing you wish you understood better?
Those are great questions, Mark. And as we move forward in today's discussion, We hope to shed some light on these topics. Remember, everyone's journey to retirement is unique, but the goal is the same.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So let's roll up our sleeves and get into the nitty-gritty of retirement planning. Dr. Laura, why don't you kick us off with some common mistakes people make in retirement planning?
I'd be happy to, Mark. You're right, diving into common retirement planning mistakes. You know, Mark, I once had a friend who completely underestimated how much she'd need for retirement. She thought her regular savings would be enough, but later realized she hadn't factored in medical expenses, inflation, and lifestyle changes.
Oh, that's a classic, Dr. Laura. It's like my buddy Earl back home. He thought he'd just live off his Social Security. Well, he was in for a rude awakening when he realized it was more of a safety net than a mattress full of cash.
Exactly, Mark. It's crucial to have a realistic view of post-retirement expenses. And another mistake I've seen is people putting all their eggs in one basket, investment-wise. Diversification is key to managing risk.
For sure, that reminds me of my neighbour who put all his savings into a single stock. Let's just say it didn't hatch into the golden egg he was hoping for. You got to spread the risk, like butter on toast.
I love that analogy, Mark. Also, people often overlook the impact of taxes on their retirement savings. It's important to understand the tax implications of your retirement accounts and plan accordingly.
Taxes, the unavoidable guest at every financial party. I learned that lesson the hard way when I first started my IRA. I was like, what do you mean I got to pay taxes on this later?
That's a common reaction, Mark. Let's not forget about adjusting your retirement plan as life changes. What works for you at 35 might not be suitable at 55.
Ain't that the truth? Life throws curveballs, and your retirement plan should be flexible enough to catch them, like when my sister had to adjust her plan after her kids decided college was in their future.
Absolutely. Life is full of surprises. Another mistake is not factoring in healthcare costs. As we age, healthcare becomes a significant part of our expenses, and it's something that needs to be planned for.
Healthcare, yep. You don't want to be caught on a rainy day without an umbrella. My aunt learned that the hard way with unexpected medical bills. It's better to plan for it than to be surprised.
So true, Mark, and for our listeners, think about this.
Great points to ponder, Dr. Laura. It's about being proactive, not reactive. Remember, folks, your retirement plan is a living document. It should grow and change as you do.
Well said, Mark. Let's move on to the topic of investment strategies for retirement. This is where things can get really interesting.
So, Dr. Laura, let me tell you about my first investment. I was greener than a field of clover in spring, bought some stock in a company because, well, their logo was my favorite color. Not my brightest moment, I'll admit.
Oh, Mark, that's a charming story, and it's a great starting point for our discussion on investment strategies. When we think about investing for retirement, it's about more than just picking stocks with nice logos. It's about understanding risk and diversification.
Risk and diversification, yeah, I learned that lesson eventually. You've got to spread your investments out, like planting different crops in your field. Some might do well one year, others the next.
That's a great analogy, Mark. And different investment vehicles like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and even real estate can react differently to market changes. It's important to have a mix.
Mix it up, exactly. Now, when it comes to risk, I've learned I'm more of a tortoise than a hare. Slow and steady wins the race for me, but everyone's different, right?
Absolutely, Mark. Everyone's risk tolerance is different, and it can change over time. As you get closer to retirement, for instance, you might want to shift towards more conservative investments to protect what you've accumulated.
Protection, that's key. It's like putting a sturdy fence around your farm. Keeps the critters from nibbling away at your hard-earned crops, or in this case, savings.
And speaking of protection, let's not forget the role of retirement accounts like 401k and IRAs. They're not just places to store money. They're tools for growing your wealth, often with tax advantages.
Tax advantages, that's a big deal, like finding a shortcut on your morning commute. And don't forget, folks, you can often get employer contributions in a 401k. That's like free money.
Free money indeed, Mark. And for our listeners, think about your current retirement accounts. Are you maximizing their potential? Are you taking full advantage of employer matches and tax benefits?
Good questions, Dr. Laura. It's like checking the oil in your car. You've got to do it regularly to keep things running smoothly. How about we talk a bit about timing in investments?
Timing is crucial, Mark. In investing, it's not just about what you buy, but when you buy and sell. Timing the market can be tricky, but a long-term perspective usually helps smooth out the bumps.
Long-term, that's my style too. It's like planting a tree. You don't do it because you want shade tomorrow, but because you want a nice, cool spot to relax in a few years.
And let's address a common concern.
No panicking, got it. It's like riding a horse. You got to stay calm, or the horse gets jittery too. Stick to your plan and don't let every market dip throw you off.
Exactly. And for our listeners, how do you react to market ups and downs? Do you have a plan to manage these inevitable fluctuations?
Great point. And hey, diversification isn't just about types of investments. It's also about geographical spread. Don't put all your eggs in one country's basket, so to speak.
International diversification can be a wise move, Mark. It's like having friends in different towns. If one town is having a tough time, the others might be doing just fine.
Friends in different towns, I like that. And let's not forget, retirement is not the end of your investment journey. You might need your investments to keep growing even after you retire.
That's an important point. Retirement can last decades, so your money needs to keep working for you. It's a balance between enjoying your retirement and ensuring you don't outlive your savings.
Balancing act, indeed. Kind of like balancing a checkbook, but on a larger scale. You've got to keep an eye on it and make adjustments as needed.
And for our listeners, think about your investment strategy. Does it reflect your current life stage? Are you balancing growth with safety as you approach retirement?
Those are the questions to ask for sure. And remember, folks, you don't have to do this alone. Financial advisors can be great resources, especially if you're feeling a bit out of your depth.
That's right, Mark. Seeking professional advice can be a smart move. Well, I think we've covered a lot on investment strategies. Shall we move on to discussing lifestyle and budgeting for retirement?
Let's do it, Dr. Laura. When it comes to retirement, it's not just about how much you have, it's about how you use it. Let me tell you about my budgeting adventures when I first started planning for retirement.
I'm looking forward to hearing about that, Mark. Budgeting for retirement is so critical. It's not just about the numbers. It involves understanding your lifestyle choices and how they impact your finances. I remember when I first created a budget for my retirement, it was quite an eye-opener.
Oh, budgeting. That reminds me of the time I tried to budget for a fishing boat in my retirement plan. Well, I figured I'd just cut back on dining out. But then I realized how much I enjoyed those Friday night dinners at the local diner. It was a real tug-of-war.
That's a perfect example of the emotional aspects of financial planning, Mark. Retirement isn't just about surviving. It's about living the life you've imagined. So balancing your desires with financial realities is key.
Absolutely, Dr. Laura. It's like balancing a checkbook with your dreams. You've got to make sure the numbers add up, but you also want to make sure you're living a life full of the things that make you happy.
And when we talk about budgeting, it's not just about cutting expenses. It's about smart spending. Sometimes it's more about reallocating resources to better match your retirement lifestyle.
Smart spending, that's the ticket. Like, instead of buying that new fishing boat, I invested in a good used one, saved a bundle, and still got to enjoy my time on the lake.
Wise move, Mark. It's also important to plan for inflation. The cost of living will likely increase over time, so your retirement budget needs to take that into account.
It's inflation, the silent budget eater. You're right, Dr. Laura. It's like planning a garden. You've got to account for the growth over time. What cost $1 today might cost $2 tomorrow.
Exactly. And healthcare is another big factor in retirement budgeting. As we age, healthcare costs can become a significant part of our expenses. It's something we need to plan for meticulously.
Healthcare, now that's a big one. Reminds me of when my neighbour underestimated his healthcare costs in retirement. Let's just say it was more than a minor bump in the road.
It's a common issue, Mark. And for our listeners, think about how you're planning for healthcare costs in retirement. It's an area where it's better to overestimate than underestimate.
Good advice, and don't forget about the fun stuff too. Budget for hobbies, travel, or whatever floats your boat. Retirement is your time to enjoy the fruits of your labour.
Absolutely, Mark. It's about finding that balance. And remember, retirement is a significant life change. It can affect not just your finances, but also your identity and your daily routine.
Oh, for sure. Retirement isn't just a financial journey, it's a personal one too. It's like stepping into a new chapter of your life, and you've got to write the story you want to live.
Well said, Mark. And speaking of personal journeys, let's touch on the emotional aspect of retirement. It can be a big adjustment, going from a full-time career to retirement.
You're telling me, Dr. Laura. When I first thought about retirement, I was as nervous as a squirrel crossing the road. It's a big change, and it can take some getting used to.
That's true. Retirement can bring a lot of freedom, but also some uncertainty. It's important to prepare, not just financially, but also mentally and emotionally for this new phase of life.
Mental and emotional preparation, that's key. It's like packing a suitcase for a long trip. You've got to make sure you've got everything you need for the journey ahead.
And for our listeners, think about how you're preparing for this emotional transition. Are you considering new hobbies, volunteer work, or other activities to fill your time and provide purpose?
Those are great ideas, Dr. Laura. Retirement is a time to explore new interests or rekindle old passions. It's your time to shine in a whole new way.
Absolutely, Mark. Retirement is not just an end, it's a beginning. And with the right planning, both financial and emotional, it can be one of the most fulfilling times of your life.
I couldn't agree more. So listeners, think about what your ideal retirement looks like. How are you planning for it, both financially and personally?
Great questions to ponder. Now, let's move on to our next segment.
I'm ready, Dr. Laura. Speaking of unexpected challenges, let me share a story. My cousin had her retirement all planned out. Then, out of the blue, she had to step in as a caregiver for a family member. It really threw her plans for a loop.
That's a poignant example, Mark. Life is unpredictable, and retirement is no exception. Preparing for the unexpected is crucial. Whether it's health issues, family needs, or even changes in the economy, having a flexible plan can make all the difference.
Flexibility, that's the key. It's like keeping an extra set of tools in the shed. You never know when you might need them. My cousin learned the hard way that it's essential to have a backup plan.
Absolutely, Mark. And part of preparing for these challenges is having an emergency fund. It's like a financial safety net that can help you handle unforeseen expenses without derailing your retirement plans.
An emergency fund, yeah, it's like having a spare tire in the trunk. You hope you never have to use it, but boy, are you glad it's there when you need it.
And let's not forget about insurance. Having the right insurance policies in place, whether it's health, long-term care, or even life insurance, can provide a buffer against unexpected financial shocks.
Insurance, that's a big one. It's like having a trusty umbrella when there's a chance of rain. You might not need it every day, but when that storm hits, you'll be glad you have it.
Another aspect of preparing for unexpected challenges is staying informed and adaptable. The world changes, economies shift, and new laws can affect your retirement. Staying on top of these changes is important.
Staying informed, that's for sure. It's like knowing the weather forecast before heading out for the day. The more you know, the better you can prepare.
And for our listeners, think about your own retirement plan. How flexible is it? Have you considered various scenarios and how you might handle them?
Great questions, Dr. Laura. And remember, it's okay to ask for help or advice. Whether it's from a financial advisor, a trusted friend, or a family member, getting a second opinion can be invaluable.
Indeed, Mark. Another challenge that often goes overlooked is the possibility of outliving your savings. With life expectancies increasing, it's a real concern for many retirees.
Outliving savings, now that's a scary thought. It's like planning a long journey and not being sure if you have enough fuel to get there. You've got to plan for the long haul.
Exactly, and part of that planning involves considering different income streams. Maybe it's a part-time job, rental income, or even an annuity. Having multiple sources of income can provide extra security.
Multiple income streams, that's smart. It's like having more than one fishing line in the water. You increase your chances of catching something.
And let's not forget about the emotional and mental challenges that can come with unexpected changes. It's important to have a support network and resources to help you navigate these situations.
Support networks, absolutely essential. It's like having a good neighbor who's there when you need to borrow a tool or just have a chat. We all need someone to lean on sometimes.
And for our listeners, who's in your support network? Who can you turn to when faced with unexpected challenges in retirement?
Great point, Dr. Laura. And don't be afraid to adjust your retirement plan as life changes. It's not set in stone. It's a living document that should evolve as your needs and circumstances do.
Well said, Mark. Being proactive, adaptable and informed can make all the difference in handling the unexpected. Now, as we wrap up this segment, let's think about how we can apply these insights to our own retirement planning. Shall we move on to our listener interaction segment, Mark?
Absolutely, Dr. Laura. This is always one of my favorite parts of the show. We've got some questions and comments sent in from our listeners about retirement planning. Let's see what's on their minds.
Let's dive in, Mark. Here's our first question.
You're spot on, Dr. Laura, and to our listener, remember the saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Every step you take today makes a difference for your future.
Here's another one, Mark.
That's right, Dr. Laura. It's like juggling. You've got to keep all the balls in the air. Sometimes you focus more on one thing, sometimes on another, but don't let that retirement ball drop.
Here's a question about investment.
Good advice, Dr. Laura, and remember, everyone starts somewhere. Nobody's born knowing all this. Take it step by step, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
What if I want to retire early? How does that change my planning? That's an interesting one. Early retirement requires more aggressive saving and planning since you'll need your funds to last longer. It's definitely achievable, but it requires careful strategy and often some lifestyle adjustments.
Early retirement, huh? That's like leaving the party early. You've got to make sure you have enough snacks packed for the longer journey home. And it's all about planning and maybe saving a bit extra each month.
This question is about budgeting.
Spot on, Dr. Laura. It's like planning a road trip. You estimate the gas, food and lodging, but you also have a little extra for those surprise detours or treats along the way.
Here's a deep one.
Fear, that's a tough one, but like you said, Dr. Laura, knowledge is power. The more you understand your situation, the more control you have over it, and that can help ease those fears.
And one last question for today.
Annual checkups, just like with your health. Keep an eye on things and make adjustments as needed. Your future self will thank you for it.
Well, that wraps up our listener interaction segment. Thanks to everyone who sent in questions.
Thanks, guys. We talked about the basics of retirement planning, emphasizing starting early and understanding different retirement plans. It's never too early or too late to begin.
We also discussed common retirement planning mistakes. Remember, folks, it's about having a realistic plan, diversifying your investments and preparing for taxes and healthcare costs.
And we dived into investment strategies, talking about the importance of balancing risk and reward, diversifying your portfolio, and considering different types of investment vehicles.
Then we explored lifestyle and budgeting for retirement. It's not just about the numbers. It's about aligning your finances with your dreams and preparing for both the expected and unexpected.
And speaking of the unexpected, we also talked about preparing for unforeseen challenges. Having an emergency fund, the right insurance, and a flexible plan can make all the difference.
We also had a great listener interaction segment, answering questions and concerns about retirement planning. It's always wonderful to engage with our audience and hear what's on their minds.
Absolutely, Dr. Laura. And remember, folks, retirement planning is a journey. It's about making informed decisions, adapting to changes, and enjoying the process.
And before we sign off, I'd like to mention MemoryCherish. Just as it's important to plan for your financial future, it's equally important to preserve your precious memories. MemoryCherish can help you restore old photos, ensuring your cherished moments are preserved for years to come.
That's a beautiful thought, Dr. Laura. Preserving memories is just as important as building a financial future. It's all part of leaving a legacy and enjoying the fruits of your labor.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you, Mark, for your insights and stories. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring.
It's been a pleasure, Dr. Laura, and a big thanks to our listeners. Remember to keep planning, keep dreaming, and keep enjoying every step of your retirement journey. And don't forget to tune in for our next episode.
Until next time, this is Dr. Laura Whitman and Mark saying goodbye. Stay curious, stay prepared, and keep cherishing those memories. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Timeless Tapestry podcast. If you enjoyed what we shared today, please help us by subscribing to the show. Not only will you be notified when the next one comes out, it also helps get the show out to many more people. We appreciate you and thank you so much for listening.